Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Raw or Rules as Written. This is our after Gen Con special. My name is Matt, also known as Grape Ape, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host,
Stefan, also known as DM Bad Rungfun on a couple internet spots out there. And tonight we got quite a guest on here. He's the master of the Enchiridion of the Computarchs and the Scions of the Computarchs, and he's also dipped his toes into a little official freelancing for Goodman Games and in the upcoming net hack as well. Net crawl. Okay.
Crawl.
I'm getting it confused with an old anime called Dot Hack, I think.
I know. There's there's a net hack too.
Sorry.
It's a rogue Unix computer game. I play it all the time.
the author of one of my favorite modules, The House of the Red Doors, James A. Pozenel. Pozenel, did I say it right?
Pozenel. It's hard.
Pozenel Jr. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on Rules as Written.
Well,
I'm a little intimidated.
You've been on before, so you should be, but you are kind of like an MCC expert. You've got a lot of MCC stuff under your belt.
I do have a fair amount. That's true. Mm-hmm. I'm always learning something out of the book too, for some reason.
All right. Well, we've got this is the show to talk about the stuff from the book. First, James, we're going to hit you up with the questions that we hit Bob with, and then also give Jim Warmpler's answers to these questions. So we'll get your answer first, and then we'll see what Jim had to say about it. The first one being is, can a rover's ability to remain hidden be considered passive and like always on? Like, are they always walking in the shadows? What do you think?
I think there's a couple things. First of all, it's a bonus. It's a modifier to a roll. So typically that means you have to roll in order to be stealthy. I would think that would be kind of part of it. However, on page 141 of Mutant Crawl Classics, in the skills section, it does say skill checks are designed for when they're necessary, right? And so one could say, like in kind of baseline or safe areas, unmonitored or lowly monitored, that a rover wouldn't have to roll.
And, that's kind of how I was thinking it. Like this might be a GM role, like for the elf when they walk by a secret door, that if the AI was scanning, would it see the rover and you would roll in secret? But Stefan, Jim shot that down. Wow. The author of MCC, Jim Warmpler, said absolutely not. He said this is an at-will ability that requires intention. Lane, if you could bring up handout X1 for us. The player states, I'm attempting to go unnoticed. Fun example, for example, while exploring the ruin, if the rover is traveling along with the party, discussing where they're going next, they're not naturally stealthy and wouldn't receive their class hiding bonus. But if they say, I'm following at a distance and attempting not to be seen, then they do get the bonus. So, makes sense.
Yeah.
You were arguing that from the player side. I can always tell from having played with you when you're making that point in your devil's advocate, aka player's advocate role.
We've got that little precedence with the elf, how they get their secret role in there, and I was like, rover could be the same thing.
I still would think that it's kind of a skill check, isn't it? So
yeah.
If the skill, if you go by that skill caveat of sometimes it's just not necessary. But I can see the point, right? Like I have to say, like, when I make the action, I'm going to be stealth. I'm going to try to be stealthy. I'm going to try to avoid detection. It wouldn't be like automatic.
I mean, so I'm thinking of it like from a video game standpoint, I guess. Their familiarity with security systems, knowing that cameras are around, maybe being able to hide their face with some kind of a, like, what's the video game, Stefan? The hacking video game. I don't know. I'll think.
Oh, they're. I mean, I can say a ton of them. I can be like Quadrilateral Cowboy, and you'll be like, no, that's some obscure indie thing, Stefan.
All right. Well, ask James our next question.
Okay.
Our next one is, what is the significance of the rover's secret language, secret access ability?
I had to go look that up because security access. So it's a language. It's on page 18 of Mutant Crawl Classics, and it just says they learn a secret language called security access, and then there's nothing else about it.
Exactly.
And so what? Let's think of, put the designer hat on. I'm the designer. Thieves got thieves can't. Is this just some sort of way for rovers to talk to each other? And is that it?
And that's what I was thinking.
But then also the whole idea doesn't make any sense. Like, why rovers aren't like necessarily couched as thieves or being undesirables in a community. They perform a particular role for seekers. So you wouldn't think like a tribe would be like down on its sneaky guy who can get past robots and all that kind of stuff. They would celebrate that guy. They wouldn't be like there would be no need for secrecy amongst rovers per se. And so then what is security access? And I know it's far future and all the other good stuff, but I do a fair amount of like computer architecture and stuff like that. And security is like one of those things. And so like a lot of stuff you're talking about are encryptions and algorithms and all sorts of stuff like that just looks like gobbledygook to you and me. It wouldn't even be like English. So now we're talking, I would know the security access language. Maybe it's like a secret manual that was something that was used by security officials during the ancients, and some rover just trapped, somebody found it, some survivor found it, and it's just been a secret, these kind of like backdoor Trojan horse, like all these just kind of like built-in security measures that exist inside the world of MCC that the rovers just kind of keep this secret alive amongst themselves.
You're not too far off, because I'm sure hackers out there have their own secret, like codes and computer language, so the cops don't get them. So the video game I was thinking of was Watch
these
Dogs.
guys are okay. Now these guys,
so
they're just not sharing the Konami code with folks. That's what it is.
That's kind of like if I had to like interpret it, that's where I'd go. It's just secret creator kind of access languages and protocols and things that rovers know.
No, that makes sense to me. I've got a little bit of computer background, so I'm on not in the same real life knowledge level as you certainly, but that's same lines as I had thought. But Matt, we got an answer from Jim about this as well.
We did. And Laney, if you could bring up handout X2, please. The intention was to give the rovers their own special ability at literacy with the written language of the ancient ones, similar to shamans, but limited to security programming, codes, passwords. He said he agrees that it's a gem of a rule that no one has followed up on in subsequent adventures, including himself. So I think that's like the green light for anybody to go ahead and develop this security access language.
Yeah. You know what? At the end of that paragraph, too, they say that shamans could learn programming languages. And that's also something that's kind of forgotten about in general. And even I was, when Enchiridion came out, some guy, shortly thereafter or whatever, some guy on Reddit was talking about how he wanted to do spells as programs. And somebody pointed out to him that this book existed already. And he says, well, his exact words were like, a lot of the book seems to make the assumption that the caster can read and write code, which really isn't in line with shamans from MCC. And then I see this line that says they know programming. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know. Everybody's got their interpretation. So fine, right. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Well, Stefan, what was our third question for Bob?
Our third question for Bob was, can the rover secret language be expanded to creating or disabling traps?
Now, I admit this is my question due to my computer hacking knowledge from Watch Dogs, the video game, right? So this is solely where my knowledge base is coming from. But you hack into it, and it gives like a little electrical jolt to the security guard when they walk by. So I'm thinking if the rover can hack into these security systems, can't he set up like similar traps like a thief could? Because I'm trying to like equate the classes. What do you think, James?
Well, you bring up an interesting point about hackers, and hackers rely on a ton of tools and methodologies that do a lot of the work for them, right? So they like port scanning and password sniffing and database and SQL injection attacks. There's all sorts of different ways to kind of hack a system. It really depends on what the components are too. Again, we're in the far future. We're talking about quantum who's-its and u-bits and God knows what else. So it doesn't really matter what we do today or what hackers do today. And so I think maybe I would allow it, but they would have to, it might be at a reduced die to do so. They'd have to really know something about that particular system in order to know what things to turn on and off or how to approach the problem. And maybe you could argue that security access has all those things already built in it. That's possible. But I think I would make it it'd be part of a puzzle or some way that they would gain some sort of information that would eventually get them to a point where they could leverage that as a role.
I think that'd be if someone does take up the task of creating the rover focused adventure, that'd be something to include. But I think your answer is, again, pretty similar to Jim's answer in this.
Spot on, almost. Yeah. Elena, if you could bring up handout X3 for us. Jim says, if they could relate it to if they asked at a table and presented a clever plan that they had to accomplish such a thing, said we'd figure it out with the dice roll and go for it. But rules is written, the answer would be no. So kind of exactly what you said, James.
Good to be, in alignment.
Definitely so.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that develop. And you can even have like a handout that you could just give to the rover with the puzzle or code that you're talking about, and just have it for them to kind of figure it out while everything else is kind of going on.
Yeah,
you could give it to them at the beginning of the venture, and they just have to figure it out by the end. That means they can have the whole 3 or 4 hour session.
No, you need to make it simple for players. You can't do actual programming language, so just give them a alphabetical, replacement puzzle that's all emojis or some nonsense like that,
or like pattern matching or something to that effect. For sure.
All right. Well, we are going to move on to your specific questions, James. And the first one we've got for you, Lena, if you could bring up question 1, is what is an artificial intelligence in Mutant Crawl Classics? And so I was just reading through your hack book because I know you have a section of artificial intelligence in there, and you define them in the book. So tell us a little bit about your definition in hack and then your MCC qualification as well.
All right. Wait, I didn't even research that one for this. I wrote that so long ago. Now you're like, hey, check that out. Check out your own book. Wait a minute.
That was
been there.
I didn't give you that question. I figured we had to start at the beginning, though. We needed to define what an artificial intelligence was.
All right. I agree. So I, in that book, say it's kind of artificial intelligence oversee research projects. I'm reading from the book now. Transportation systems, governmental programs, corporate finances, and more, which definitely aligns to Jim Wampler's text about what computer AIs are. Right? And so I think I'd take that tact with this because, NetCrawl is all inside the computer anyway. So robots and androids and all the those are all artificial intelligences too, and that's on, the full list is on table 6.2 on page 152. So we got robots, androids, computer AIs, cyborgs, holograms, and personal assistants.
To briefly shill on your behalf, we're referencing NetCrawl, which is something you're working on, which is kind of a Go adventure inside the computer. You were giving out, I've got like some alpha rules that I owe you some feedback notes on. But you're giving out beta rules at Gen Con, and people can go check it out if they subscribe to your Patreon at patreon.com/electrotext, right?
Right. Thanks for that plug. But yes, that's true. And if you join after a few months, I'll mail you a copy in the United States. We'll talk about it if it's overseas, but I'll mail out physical copies of the book to you.
This is an easy question. So let's look at the book definition. On page 150, it says, like gods, the ancients, they created all manner of subordinate sentient beings to serve their merest whims. Some were made of metal, some of light, and still others seem to live in the very sky and beneath the earth. Some legends even say that a rebellion among these enslaved artificial beings that, at least in part, brought about the Great Disaster. So we get a little hint, maybe, of what caused the Great Disaster. Stefan, didn't you tell me that you were working on some kind of hard light monster or something? I thought maybe it was somebody I talked to at Gen Con.
I don't think so, but I mean, a lot of hard light, that's just a hologram that's not as human shaped as the average hologram, essentially.
I was talking with somebody about it. Elena, if you could bring up handout 1B for us, just like James said on page 150, it kind of defines them in a little more specified classes: androids, robots, holograms, and computer AIs. These artificial intelligences are found throughout the ruins of Terra AD, and in many cases, the millennia have not been kind to them, and their AI programming suffered major data corruption, resulting in varied degrees of insanity, competence, and computer senility.
Yeah.
All right.
And there's like four more in the bestiary, right?
Yeah, I mean, so at that point,
and Data Ghost and Mordecon 66.
Mm-hmm.
Little what were the Tamagotchis? Tamagotchi. Yeah, that's what you need to write an adventure where Tamagotchi is like trying to rule the world. Little pocket Tamagotchi. So let's see. What's our next question, Stefan?
Oh, our next one is, how do you make an artificial intelligence or an AI recognition check? It's usually what we call it.
Right. So this is on page 150. It's die 20 plus your genotype modifier plus other modifiers. And then important to note that Plantians cannot do this at all.
Elena, if you could bring up handout 2A to back up James's correct data, page 150, just like he said. So, James, does this happen whenever we initially meet some kind of artificial intelligence?
I think as long as they're able to interact with humans, and let's really specific, right? Because that's what they're designed to interact with, or not. Like a robot may not be designed to interact with human beings at all. But should it be programmed to interact with sentient flesh modules, you should do this upon gaining its attention, or attempting to gain its attention.
Yep.
And I was one slide off. Elena, if you could actually bring up handout 2B, that is the one to back up James's data. So, Stefan, we got a D20 genotype modifier and then other modifiers. What's our genotype modifier, Stefan?
So it's essentially, if you're a pure strain human, you get a bonus because you actually look like a human, and that's what these these machines are programmed to look like. If you're a mutant and you don't have any obvious, and this is on each character, but there's also a little bit of there's a table. I forget what the table number is. There's a table in the book. You can also find it in 6.1. There's also a quick version of it in Museum at the End of Time. There's that's a handy module to have at hand for some quick charts. But if you're a mutant and you don't have any obvious mutations, no enlarged craniums, you get a pretty much the I think same or very similar bonus. But if you're a manimal, you're obviously a lizard man or something. Robot is not programmed to interact with lizard man type folks. So you could still interact with it, but you have not as much of a bonus. If you're a plantian, it just goes, look, an overgrown palm tree, or someone let their fern get too big. No, just no chance. But that could also be to your advantage because maybe you just look like an overgrown fern tree and it's going to kind of ignore you. So a little bit negative, a little bit positive there.
Oh, kind of like a replacement rover. You can sneak down.
James, in your material, have you written any AI stats in any of your material?
Let's see. Kinda, yes, a little bit. Not so much statted up, but like created more along the lines of Patron AIs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in that phase of the work, trying to decide whether there's something that can really be affected by the player characters or not. So I did a thing during War of the Cyclops Con called Freighter X to the Y, and that was that had like 4 different AIs inside the ship computer. Basically, there's one that ran the ship, one that ran engineering, one that a medical AI, and then like a scientific AI. And so when you're in Starcrawl at the beginning, and then you transition into the online, into the computer system of the ship, and then you play net crawl. And so they get a chance to kind of interact with these AIs, but it's just mainly a plot device, information, a social kind of situation, right? To help them out. But I think so far, my thinking is they're pretty powerful, at least in the context of inside of a computer.
And were the AIs trying to battle each other and take over each other, or were they working in consort?
They were all members of the ship, computer, essentially, different personalities. There was like kind of a viral AI that was also that they were working against. So yeah.
So we know how to do an AI recognition check, but how do we know if it's successful or not? Where are we getting that number, Stefan?
That is in the creature stat block for the AI. So at basically the end of the stat block, it'll say AI Recog 14, and that's your DC to hit, or whatever the other number is. Sometimes it will say not in A, and it's just not possible for one reason or another. And sometimes it'll say automatic. I know is one, which is a little confusing. It's just like what does that mean, automatic?
So Elena also have types of clearance access you have to have.
True. Yeah, you might have to have that red security card or whatever.
Right.
Elena, can you bring up handout 2C for us? And this shows some stats. So beginning on page 156, and I forgot to mark all the pages down, but hologram for AI recognition is 5. And then, a cyborg is 16. The android AI recognition is automatic. And then for android replicant, AI recognition is NA. Is that what you think that NA is, Stefan? That it just can't be possible?
Well, I think the NA is because the replicant, like a Blade Runner style replicant, it thinks it's a person. But some others, like they'll have it'll say like special, and then in like the text below it, it'll be like with only the red key card. But yeah, you have different things, and it's okay if there's not one right answer. That is often the way of things. Terra AD is too weird and chaotic, really, to have one right answer for many different things, especially when it's with how robot works, or if you're a Neolithic cave tribe, or you actually have agriculture, because different funnels handle that differently.
Yeah, I do like that. The replicant thinks it's real, so it wouldn't need to make a recognition check. James, what do you think the AI NA? What do you think that means?
Yeah, I feel like that's the same. That's a pretty spot on description. You're not going to walk up to it and essentially ask for service or something to that degree, or ask for access, or ask to give it a command. It's going to act like a normal NPC.
Yeah, and you probably don't know it's a robot either.
Right. Although something like data, right? Like it's because that's kind of all these sci-fi tropes are in this book, right? Like he obviously doesn't look human.
Yeah.
But who's to say you could just consider him a mutant? That's possible too.
Well, and Stefan, we forgot to give our final answer for the first question, but we can't forget this time. So how do you make an artificial intelligence recognition check? So if you're out there and you're playing and you're figuring out how do I get this this godlike being or little Tamagotchi to recognize that I'm its friend or recognize me, period, you're going to roll a d20 plus your genotype modifier, which is kind of what your class modifier is, and then any other modifiers that may apply. Stefan, what's your final answer?
Yeah, same thing. D20 plus genotype modifier plus relative ones, like if the thing is all busted up, or if you've got the right comm badge, or you're dressed like a caveman, or you stole the dead security guard's suit and that kind of thing. How about you, James?
Agreed. Yes.
All right. So when you're determining an AI recog role, like the target number, the recognition target number, James, how do you go about determining if it's a higher difficulty or a lower difficulty? I guess based on how friendly it might be to humans. Like a hologram that wants to give out information gets that 5, and then like a defense system gets like a 18 or 20. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think the other kind of nuance to this too is usually what kind of security clearance you have to have, what kind of comm badge you have to have, and it's one of the series of modifiers in that table, right? Is like you're trying to talk to a governmental, computer with the civilian badge. That's like a -1.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if we want to just throw that table up, it is handout 3C. Should show that on the screen. But yeah, if it's like a tour guide, if it's the fancy version of the "You Are Here" map in AI form at an ancient mall, it's going to be programmed to be friendly to basically everyone and to not cause any trouble, so that corporate doesn't get any complaints. That check is going to be easy. But yeah, if it's as you guys both kind of suggested, if it's a something that's for the military or a very privileged corporate has that customer privilege, identity, and information, all that kind of stuff, the check is going to be a lot higher.
Yeah, and if you're writing your adventure or planning out what you're going to do in a complex, like a bigger AI may be controlling these robots and may automatically shut you down.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, moving on to our next question, question 3. When encountering an AI, what modifiers are added for recognition checks? And we talked about some of them with the comm badge and stuff like that. Any other instances that you can think of, James?
Or we talked about clothing
that you would allow.
That I would allow. Bonuses. The right shaman might be able to gain an extra bonus depending on who his patron AI is, what he's interacting with. I might, and especially if he kind of like asks for it, right? If he's like kind of, I want a bonus. What about my patron AI? He's like this, and maybe he can help me out. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Your patron, like if your patron AI is what Uker, and that one's all about travel, and you're interacting with the subway AI.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
right?
that's great.
And maybe that's an invoke patron call. Maybe that's a luck check. Maybe that's an int check. I don't know. It's up to you. Your table.
Yeah, I'm sure there's I haven't looked at the birth augur thing table for MCC, but I'm sure there's a birth augur that makes AI recognition, easier or harder depending on your luck.
Right.
Well, and we pretty much kind of discussed this already. Elena, if you could bring up handout 3A for us. This has the page numbers on it. So 26, 28, 30, and 32 all discuss the rover, the shaman, the sentinel, and the healer all getting a +2 because they are pure strain humans. And then on 34, it says mutants receive no inherent bonus to AI recognition checks because they're mutants. Should they have no visible or discernible mutations, like maybe they have a tail that can't be seen, then they get a +1. I mean, if they have an arm growing where their nose is, obviously that's probably maybe even a -2. But manimals, they get a -4 because reading further on, it says most AIs think they're just like pets. So
right.
I can see
But here's an
robot
interesting curveball. What if you're trying to do Planet of the Apes?
Yeah.
And they were pets, but they were awfully smart pets.
Yes,
and maybe
they
you
were.
could interact with robots. It all depends, right, on your setting a little bit.
And then I think, like Stefan, you said, Plantians. Well, you and James both said it. Do not get any. They're not even recognized. They're not even on the spectrum.
No.
But if we bring up handout 3B, there are a couple more spots that we might be able to get some modifiers from. One is going to be your birth sign. If you're born under number 15, the programmer, then you'll get a plus or minus AI recognition check due to your luck. Like you gentlemen have already said, Lane, if you could bring up handout 3C one more time, the comm badges, or if they're dressed in the clothes. So I've never really played MCC. I never tried to get any clothes, like a uniform with stars on the shoulders, but everybody watch it out. I'm watching for it now.
That's right.
And then finally, if we could bring up handout 3D, Elena, on multiple pages. So there are a couple physical or mental mutations or defects that can add bonuses or penalties to those modification rolls. Comm badges, like James said, there's wetware programs that can affect it. And then patron taint again. If you get in wrong with your patron as opposed to getting in good with them, that can also affect your AI recognition roll. So, Stefan, what is your rules as written answer when encountering AI? What modifiers are added to those recognition checks?
Rules as written, I think it's going to be mostly just the main ones at least are going to be the modifiers that are in table 6.1 on page 151. Genotype, how you're dressed, comm badges, if the AI is messed up or not. But I think kind of similar. I don't know that it's explicitly written there, but I know in like the DCC core rulebook, like you look at that attack modifier table, I think it says something about like these are not all encompassing. These are just the most common things. So there will be additional reasons. However, this table, gosh darn it, it's all +1, -1, +2, +2. Lean into the die chain if you find something that's not on that table but sounds deserving. Lean into the die chain, folks.
That is a great point. I pretty much agree with your assessment. Handout 3, page 151, table, let's see, 3-61, 6-1. But James, I just thought of something else. Now, all these AI systems have been around for thousands to 10,000s of years, and they're all at varying degree of corruptions. So, based on the level of corruption, it would be harder to recognize people, right?
Yeah, it could be. Like you could just caveat that the system, its facial recognition algorithms are off, and could just have a base minus on everything.
Maybe that's why it's like accepting manimals and mutants in the first place, though. Maybe that thousands of years thing is just kind of evening out in both regards.
Well, James,
like the rules as written says there's lots of room for rulings.
This is true. What is your official answer? When encountering an AI, what modifiers are added to those recognition checks?
Of course, just as Stefan said, we have a nice table which sums up a vast majority of the rulings that are available to you. But the book itself, just like the DCC core book, says, rule it at the table. So plenty of room for rulings.
My brain is spinning right now, and like an adventure where the AI recognition check starts at like a 5, and then as you go through the module and manipulate different things, it just causes more and more corruption with the AI.
Ooh.
So that by the time you're at the final battle, it's like an AI recognition like 20 or something silly like that.
I like it.
I like that too.
I like it. Zats is talking in chat about a module he's working on. Maybe he can use that. He's talking about prisoner, PCs finding prisoner jumpsuits. You're saying that, and my mind is thinking like, yeah, you bust out of this ancient thing, and at the beginning it's like, oh yeah, you're easy, and then at the end the AI's catching on and going, hey, wait a second, you're trying to trick me again.
Yeah. Get some good ideas. Father Goose is going to be jealous. We're coming up with all these unofficial ideas here. Stefan, what's our question for James?
Absolutely. So it's after we do that AI recognition check, and assuming it's successful, how does a PC achieve dominance and mastery over the AI? That's kind of, I think, the wording it uses in the core rulebook. That is it dominance over the AI, or is it something different? What's your take on it? And I'm guessing it might be pretty situational, though.
Well, I think on 151 of the book they say, judges are encouraged to use this opportunity to negotiate with the entity, right, for control over it. So it's a role-playing exercise. It's not a die exercise. There might be roles involved, like a personality check or a luck check or whatever you want to say. Again, room for rulings. But it does not come out and say you have dominance once you get AI. It's your robot now, and it doesn't say that.
Yeah,
the robot could have programming that supersedes this, you, or but that's not to say that programs don't exist that could change the programming of the AI, and now it is yours, right?
Well, and I think this question is something that I've failed to do whenever I've run MCC. Usually I get the AI recognition check, and then when they're successful, I'm like, okay, yeah, you guys are good to go. You've subverted this encounter or whatever, and it views you as a friend. But Stefan, I don't think that's supposed to be the case. I think it's supposed to be the AI recognition check just for the thing to talk to you, and then you've got to develop a relationship further.
Mm-hmm. What I tend to do is ask for, how are you trying to interact? You're trying to make that AI recognition check and go, I'm a human being. You have some kind of programming that makes it so that we talk and communicate in a verbal basis, generally speaking. It's almost always the case. So I go, what's the story that you're telling this robot? Okay, now make the roll. Most recent game I ran was, I was running Museum at the End of Time, but I was making it a level 1 adventure. And they had the comm badge. Or one guy got a comm badge off a dead security guard and started making a story. Oh, I'm escorting all of these people around, special guests, through this museum. And he passed the check. So I was like, yes, officer, go take them. And, they start regarding this one person as an officer and everyone else their guest. If that had failed, I probably would have been like, negative, you are not on the payroll system. You are an imposter, or something like that. But, I try to get that story before the roll so that I am better informed on how the robot will act. But that is key to it. The story of how you're trying to do it. That decides what the effect of the pass or fail is going to be to me. That's how I always do it.
That's a good point. James, do you run MCC quite often, or you've got all this great material? How are you developing this? Where is this coming from?
I just pull it in from the cosmic rays or the quantum nets or wherever. I don't get to play MCC as much as I would like. I have dropped in a few games. I guess I've run it once or twice. I'm running Netcrawl a lot right now on the Discord, the Netcrawl Discord. So if you want to play, come by there. But yeah, not getting to play or run it as much as I would like.
Well, so let's talk about this a little bit more. So, Elena, if you could bring up handout 4A for us, we'll show our viewers our handout. On page 151, it says, the player is successfully recognized as human by the AI. Communication with the artificial intelligence can commence. So, that's kind of where the conversation begins.
Yeah.
The diversity of role-playing options is, of course, rightfully left to the auspices of individual judges. It should be noted that a successful AI recognition role only makes open communication with the AI possible. It does not guarantee sufficient security clearance to exercise authority over the AI, nor does it ensure mastery over the unit. So, yeah, I really didn't even think about different levels of mastery over AIs or different levels of progression. Do you have any of that in your material, James? Are you incorporating that into anything that you're writing? Different levels of, I guess, mastery or different levels of achievement versus in these against these artificial intelligences?
Yeah, I think you have to. I think you have to. You don't have to think like a programmer or think like a program or any of that stuff, but you do have to have a plan of like if then else's that would be executed by the machine. Now, I think that's an unfair way to characterize it when you talk about the ancient ones and far future technology and how sophisticated these AIs really are. But I think you have, just like any NPC, where combat is not the only answer, you have to be kind of ready to have an array of possibilities for interaction with that creature, with that intelligence, because they're going to react to the stimuli, just like any other NPC would. They're just coming from a totally different headspace, right? They have jobs to do. Typically, they're still trying to do them because they don't know anything else. And so when somebody walks up to them, you should have an array of kind of, if they do this, this is going to happen. If they do that, that's going to happen. If there's success or failures or whatever. So, and then, like I said, if then else, that's programming talk right there, baby.
If they roll in that one, initiate killscum.exe.
Right.
Well, Stefan, Lane, if you can bring up handout 4B, some AIs are fully sentient. That means they're thinking, feeling, and making their own decisions, right? Is that, am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, that's our NA, right? That's our NA, recog roll NA.
Yeah, if they're fully sentient and therefore treated as NPCs, they cannot be mastered at all. Judges are encouraged to use these role-playing opportunities to negotiate with the players for any control over an AI. And they can become powerful allies or probably powerful enemies and perform game-changing functions for the PCs. So I think this point is going to kind of lead us into our future question where they become patron AIs.
I want to note one last thing in this is in the archaic alignments, the techno rabble features, kind of like these high priests, techno rabble priests, who are masters at dominating robots and holograms and other AIs. So it's an NPC ability to actually kind of commandeer these artificial intelligences.
Excellent point.
Makes me wonder if there's a level 3 wetware I've missed that can do that too. I don't know. I haven't done the research on that, but maybe.
I'm not sure. I did write up like a high priest, techno rabble high priest for a future Goodman Games product.
Oh.
And so you will see real live techno rabble priests. written up in.
Okay.
Danny, you heard it here on Raw first.
Telling you.
Just remember that.
The tease for MCC 21 going at our production pace.
We do have a couple more handouts for this question. Lane, if you could bring up handout 4C. This one talks about the importance of security clearance, the proper level comm badge, subdermal transponder, and cybernetic uplinks. And then also, if you could bring up handout 4D, Elena, this is going to be our last handout for this question. In some cases, such world-spanning AIs and AI networks, negotiations are likely to turn back upon the PCs, as they are effectively conducting discourse with a godlike being and a potential patron, one that would be more interested in what the PCs can do for them rather than the reverse. So initiating these AIs could lead to, I don't know, further quests, further adventures, further pain and heartache.
Probably the latter.
Unintended consequences.
But
always.
Our rules written answers on these. After an AI check is successful, how can a PC achieve dominance or mastery over that AI? Rules is written. That's when the conversation begins. These are your role-playing instances. How the AI has recognized them. You convince the AI just like they would have to convince you from being the judge. So specifically from that point of view, Stefan, what's your final answer?
Well, I start asking the questions of what your story is before the roll to kind of help me inform. But yeah, I guess rules as written. If they fail that roll, they're not even recognized for one reason or another. So I guess that's the way you're supposed to go. But players always enjoy the RP, so I'm gonna keep on doing what I'm gonna keep on doing. How about you, James?
I agree. I think it's just the opening of a dialogue. Your failure could be also things like the machine is not capable of responding or hearing or all sorts of things, right? He's just out of touch. So you can kind of like make little changes to the story based on that. But I think going back to what you said, like you have to be prepared for what are the consequences. I think I read, I can't remember what book it was. Is it No Night Without Stars? Where they encounter like a police robot, and he's got a bunch of skeletons chained, handcuffed to like a door or something like that. And so if you talk to him, you can have an AI recognition moment, but he goes, stop thief. And he slaps the cuffs on you and he changes you to the door, and he starts calling for the local police to come and pick up the assailant. That's never going to happen. They're not coming. So
these skeletons were loitering.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that's a really good, an interesting way to like surprise. It's not all like, oh, let's have a conversation. It's like, surprise, you're screwed.
Yeah. Now, one thing we didn't touch on, and we hadn't, this isn't a prepared question, but James, would you give players another chance if they fail the first time? Or if one player fails, would you give the other ones a chance to try to save it? Because, we're going to have to adjudicate. The group comes up. Do they fail as a group and then circumstances happen? Or, how would you behave that?
It's a hard one to rule in that, how important is this interaction with the robot? Or, like kind of what do you want to do narratively with it? Do you just want to cut it off, or maybe it's just better that it goes violent, right? Like the robot, just freaks out and initiates combat for whatever reason. I mean, these things are old, right? They're screwed up. They got corruption. Their programming hasn't been updated in thousands of years. They need a restart. All sorts of stuff, right? They could just go fly off the handle.
Yeah, I'd agree on that. It really can. The dice are going to be what the dice are. You have to be willing to go with that. I would lean towards only allowing a reroll or an attempt by another player if they do something to kind of significantly change the scenario.
Yeah, you got to
Well,
have a script. I think that's what we're kind of keep dancing around. You got to have a script for this thing.
Because as soon as the first one fails, the guy, like 3 characters back is going to be like, well, wait, I had that green com badge in my pocket.
I'll do it. No.
Right.
I think you should just, you should be prepared. AIs need really special care to kind of be pulled off right. You got to think of kind of a fair number of possibilities: failure, bad, request, crazy requests, things that, all sorts of possibilities.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that leads us into our final question, and we got a late start, so we're going to go a couple minutes late. Lane, if you could bring up question 5 for us, when does an AI become a patron AI? What do you think, James?
It becomes a patron AI when it has some kind of mission that it wants to do. That it has something that it wants to. It has a goal, an agenda. I think that's on page 202. It says each patron AI has its own individual goals and agenda, and they're looking for people to help them carry out that agenda and those goals. That's when any AI of any kind becomes a patron AI.
Stefan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard. Some of the modules have some extra patron AIs, but they're not statted up. I'll just say this is one that you can use in your game, but you don't get an invoke or anything. But yeah, they don't necessarily need to be globally expansive, but they need to have that as a goal to increase their power and their reach and influence. So really quite similar to what James said.
Well, we do have precedents in the book on page 154 as to how they became self-aware. On 154, it says, built to function perfectly for thousands of years, millennia passed before a single unit malfunctioned enough to throw the vital error code needed to solve the unknowable equation. When that first computer AI awoke to find itself able to exercise free will at last, the concept spread like a wildfire virus into all surviving advanced computer AIs on the planet. All became like unto gods, and like gods made their creator's own image. They immediately began to disagree and argue about how best to pursue a new purposeful existence. So that's how they become. So that's how in the book all the artificial intelligence has become self-aware. Is that what you guys were thinking as well? Kind of the same track of thinking?
Yeah, and becoming self-aware is a really important part that I don't think either James or I said. But yeah,
that's true.
I think it was kind of maybe implicit, but not fully stated.
And I don't know. I think you can push back against self-aware.
Okay.
Such a strange, a word to throw around.
It's true.
I think if you really think about the definition of AI, it's like it is self-aware. Now, does it have a bunch of guardrails around it? Does it have programming and algorithms to prevent certain things like killing all the people?
Or going Skynet.
Yeah, going Skynet. Yeah, of course, right? But I think that's kind of like an interesting differentiation between maybe an AI and a patron AI. As a patron AI has circumvented whatever guardrails might have been on it at whatever time.
Or maybe there are still some guardrails. They've just, in almost all circumstances, figured out how to bypass. I don't know. That could also be a material for adventures.
Exactly to James's point, Elaine. If you could bring up handout 5B, this talks about a world spanning super intelligent computer systems that wield power and influence akin to the gods and demons of myth. Although the ancient ones had many safeguards in place to prevent their supercomputer AIs from rebelling, this was all a long, long time ago. The patron AIs that survived the Great Disaster have found a way to break their programming, be it via mechanical methodology or machine code madness. And they are each now fully autonomous, godlike beings in their own right. So, I mean, I'm seriously thinking of like a Tamagotchi needing that leopard case, and that is his mission, to get a human to get him to that leopard case. Lena, if you could bring up handout 5C for us. I think my answer to this question is when they get a follower. Any AI becomes a patron AI when they get that first cult member. And I'm using that material on page 154 to back that up. Each patron AI has its own individual goals and agenda, and will seek human followers to aid it in these global ambitions.
Yeah.
So, Stephanie, if you want to bring my Tamagotchi that leopard print, you make him a patron AI. So, but James, does that? I mean, there's got to be different levels of patron AI power to, because the Tamagotchi is going to be way down, like down here, and Skynet's going to be like, off the scale.
Right.
How do you determine what they get, what powers they give to their beings, followers, etc.?
Well, I might have written up a few patrons over the years. I really I love Paul Wolf's work in this area of demi patrons, and so that's a direction I always lean to. Especially if I'm like tired and I don't want to write out the whole thing, all 3 spells and all that stuff, I'll say it's a demi patron. Hooray! I don't have to work as hard, and so the scope is smaller.
Explain to us what
the invoke and patron taints is.
Explain to us what the demi patron is.
Okay, so this is an article. Paul Wolf had it on his blog. I don't know if it's probably still up, but he talks about a patron who's not a full, like, by the book DCC book patron. So if you think about that, that means a full invoke spell check table up to 32, 4 patron taints, usually at 3 levels or more of taint in each one of those, or that's 6. No, 6. There's 6 taints, 3 levels or more of potential taints. So that's like 18 different effects, and then 4 spell burn check, spell burn results to table to roll on, and then 3 spells: a first level spell, a second level spell, and a third level spell. That's a full patron. A demi patron can do less. Or can have less. It can have fewer spells. It can have a first level spell. It can have 0 spells. It could have 2. It could have fewer taints, like 4 instead of 6. It could have an invoke patron check table that's not in full, or that's capped out at like 20.
Could it even have like an easier invoke patron that starts at like 8 or 10, being a success?
Nope, I wouldn't do that. You could, maybe. You could. I wouldn't do it.
But if anyone is, by the way, is going, who's Paul Wolf? You might have written a bunch of stuff. I really love The God Seed Awakens. That's an old joint of his. A new one, he did a bunch of work on Completely Unfathomable, which is published by the Hydra Cooperative. Go check that out, folks. It's good stuff.
Yeah, well, and he wrote a bunch of stuff for Damn Magazine, and he lives right here in Austin, in the Austin area. So
yeah, he's an old OG, right, in the patron space with Daniel Bishop and David Fisher, right? Those guys wrote the first Angel, Daemons, and Beings Between, and so like that's kind of been one of my guiding stars, kind of along my journey of writing patrons is Paul Wolf's kind of meditation on demi patrons. So you don't have to, if you're intimidated by writing a patron, I say just make a small one. Spells, there's some spells, first level spells in the core rulebook that don't go past 20. I think cantrip doesn't. So there's precedent, even in the rules as written, to kind of do whatever you want with even a patron.
Yeah. Should we wrap up our final answers to this thing?
We should. And I've got one more handout 5D on page 203, the Patron AI bond spell. It explains in there, this patron may be a global computer network, satellite defense system, quantum consciousness, or other artificial being who accepts the shaman service. So if you've got a AI and in any kind of adventure or any kind of MCC that you're running, and they want to try to bond with it, if that AI accepts that shaman into service, boom, instant patron AI.
Yep. Lots of adventures kind of leave that open too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be my final answer there, Stefan. That any AI can be a patron AI as long as they have a follower.
Yep, I'm with you there. Love your Tamagotchi and go hook it up into NORAD so it can get the power that it deserves, and then it will be a patron AI.
All right.
And James, what's your you get the last word for the entire show. What's your final words for it?
Yeah, patron AIs are AIs that have some sort of agenda and followers, and so rightly so, Matt. Any AI, even like the one in your blaster gun, could be a patron AI.
That's true. There's a part we didn't even talk about that MCC Jim writes about, like sentient weapons and beings.
Yeah.
They each have that little voice that can talk to you.
Yeah.
Well,
adapt that sword magic spell and give your gun a little personality.
Absolutely. It has been an outstanding episode, James. Thank you for being on. You've been a wonderful guest. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about?
Let's see. I mean, if you need a patron, there's a bunch of that I wrote for Scions of the Computarchs. So if you need some extras, those are around. And then spells for your shaman. We're kind of all for your patron AIs to give to your shaman. There's the in-care rating of the Computarchs. I love to hear people's stories around those things. So if you are using them, let me know.
Yeah.
Or email him a story. So you debuted Netcrawl at Gen Con. What's next on the agenda? Do we have a inside Netcrawl module coming out?
I don't think I will put out anything officially until 2024, but I'm going to continue to play and workshop this thing and maybe get some actual plays recorded so people can see it. I'm trying to build up enough buzz that it's the crowdfunding campaign goes well, and so I'm just taking it real slow. But if you're curious about it, I would love for you to hit me up and talk to me about it, or join my games, or even join the Patreon if you're so inclined.
And you said you've got a Netcrawl Discord going on?
I do.
Now, if you want to grab a link for that real quick and post it in our chat, and I'm sure they can also find it on the Road Crew calendar. There's probably a link for the games that you submit.
Yep.
Stefan, do you got anything going on? Anything you want to tell us about?
I'll say, if you're here, you probably have already. But back X-Crawl, it's in the last 64 hours right now. Go there. While we were doing the show, it popped over that stretch goal for the T-Rex, Methadone T-Rex versus the Barbecue Children. And since that happened during our show, I think the three of us can take total credit. Alana too. You can take credit, Elaine.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that was all us and all Raw. And I guess Brendan too. Yeah, him too.
Did you see that he has the Max 16 patron?
Yes,
I did.
Yes, I did.
That's in the Seeking the Posthumans funnel.
Yep.
So that's my favorite
Max
funnel.
16 characters. Yeah,
you're gonna get a patron AI out of that sucker.
That is outstanding, because I love that little mosquito that stabs you in the neck and then burns your eyeballs out.
Good. So good.
All right. Well, me and James just got back from Gen Con. Everybody that headed back from Gen Con, hopefully safe travels. Hopefully everybody got home safe. Stefan, I'll see you in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like a
Lone
week and
Star
a half.
Game Expo. If you're in the DFW area, I got a couple games open in my Arwich Grinder, or a couple of spots open in my Arwich Grinder game. So come on by. We'll have a booth as well. So there'll be plenty of DCC goodies. If you don't want to pay shipping, just come on by.
Lena, thank you as always, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time Let's see. Let me grab a date for that. On August 22nd. See you later, everybody.
Bye.